Hey guys, Claire here, and in today's video, we're going to talk about all things Harry and Meghan. Now, Suits continues to top the streaming charts for the 15th week, according to Nielsen. Well done, cast and crew of Suits. Also, I read an article that basically talked about the aggregated Google search results when it comes to female public figures, when it relates to seeking out fashion finds, and apparently Meghan is at the top of the list. So, not surprised. Now, a couple of videos back, we talked about the onslaught of celebrity memoirs, and one of the ones to watch in terms of the expectation of high sales figures is the memoir of Britney Spears. And for the past week or two, I've been seeing so many different media sources give their estimated sales figures. And now we have finally gotten the actual amounts. And while Britney's memoir has been tremendously successful, Prince Harry's memoir Spare continues to be the Guinness World Record holder for the fastest selling nonfiction book of all time. So Britney Spears' memoir sold an impressive 1.1 million copies in the first week, while Prince Harry's memoir Spare sold 1.6 million copies in the first week in the US alone. So well done to Prince Harry and Britney Spears. We also got to see an adorable photo of Prince Harry, Duchess Meghan, Prince Archie, and Princess Elizabeth just enjoying trick-or-treating in Montecito. Now, I don't know about you guys, but whenever I see photos like this, I am of two minds. One mind, I'm very happy to see them. It's always a pleasure. And it's great to see them just enjoy their lives and being a part of their community and doing normal things, and the kids growing up in such a normal, easygoing environment. But at the same time, I sort of feel like it's a little voyeuristic. And I feel a little bad for enjoying seeing the photos. I don't know. You guys let me know. How do you feel? In that regard, it's not lost on me that as horrible as it has been to witness Harry and Meghan just be at the receiving end of so much hate and vitriol for their decision to walk away, live their lives on their terms, and call out the nonsense of that environment, the plus side is that their children are not going to be used as royal pawns the way they would have been expected to be used had Harry and Meghan continued to work within the firm. Now, in last week's video, we quickly touched on the fact that Charles and Camilla would be making a trip to Kenya. And of course, the trip happened and it has since commenced. And I didn't follow the daily specifics of it all because I really don't care about Charles or Camilla in that way. But my timeline was still invaded by videos and photos. There's a lot of discourse on Twitter, particularly of people who were just really angry or annoyed that the local Kenyan government were, in their estimation, too welcoming to Charles and Camilla.
King Charles and Queen Camilla's 4-day state visit to Kenya wrapped up today. There were some memorable moments, for sure. Not all of them good, let's talk about it. So, as I've said before, with these state visits, especially state visits like this to a Commonwealth country, the goal is always to celebrate the quote-unquote close cultural ties that these two nations have. In this case, the UK and Kenya, which, to be sure, do have some close cultural ties. The royal family was sure to point out that in 1952, Kenya is the place where Queen Elizabeth II became queen. But there is also a darker side to this history because the broader close cultural ties between Kenya and the UK include a history of violence and imperialism. In fact, the same year that Elizabeth became queen in Kenya, there was an uprising against British colonialists. And the overarching tone going into this state visit was one of Kenyans expecting an apology for this. Specifically, the Kenyan Human Rights Commission, who wrote an open letter to King Charles demanding not only an apology, which we did talk about in my first video on this tour, but also acceptance of responsibility for Britain's role in the violence that happened in Kenya. And the British monarch, when they're on a state visit, they do typically give a speech. Charles was no exception. He gave a speech at a dinner in Nairobi, in which he said that the wrongdoings of the past are a cause of the greatest sorrow and the deepest regret, which in short is not an apology. Expressing regret that something happened is very different than owning up to it, not only just owning your own role, because of course Charles isn't the one that perpetuated that violence, but it was done in the name of his family and in a position that he still benefits from. Then he called out the abhorrent and unjustifiable acts of violence committed against Kenyans, which media literacy is important, yes, but also literacy is important here, because he's using something called passive voice, which makes it sound like Kenyans are just kind of fighting the air here. Who was committing those abhorrent and unjustifiable acts? The British. And while he, yes, says there can be no excuse, he is still disassociating the role of the British royal family and the government carrying out these actions in their name from the actions themselves. And that's where people are still going to have a problem. These state visits, as I said, aren't usually meant to address weighty topics like that. They are meant for diplomacy. And I am willing to bet that Charles' team and the Kenyan team who put this trip together did want to avoid any of those sticky subjects. Again, in the name of diplomacy. But as we've seen time and time again with these royal tours, your intent is not what matters. What matters is what the public ends up taking away from that trip. We saw it with Will and Kate in the Caribbean, and now we're seeing it with Charles and Camilla in Kenya. This is one of the most widely circulated photos from the tour, in which a red carpet was rolled out and steps were brought up to their Jeep for the maximum comfort of the monarch. And once again, while this is something that would have been organized by probably the Kenyan team in charge of this trip, a savvy team of royal aides would have looked at this and said, the optics here are not good, especially when you have two monarchs like Charles and Camilla who are used to tramping around in the mud in the UK when it comes to like horse races and hunting. And again, don't get me wrong, I understand that this is literally Kenya rolling out the red carpet and treating its royal guests well. The rub of that for a lot of people is that when the president of South Africa was in the UK for Queen Elizabeth's funeral, he did not receive reciprocal treatment. He was literally bussed with other world leaders to the funeral. It's that disparity, once again, that just kind of brings in those thoughts of colonialism, which we would like to not see in 2023. And listen, Camilla is a big part of these uncomfy moments as well. This is the other most widely circulated photo from this trip. Listen, the context has kind of been disconnected from this photo, but this is, again, not the kind of image that you want to see out of a royal tour. Charles was inside an engagement and Camilla, for whatever reason, was waiting in the car. This just opens you up to criticisms of not caring enough or not wanting to be bothered enough to participate in events on this royal tour. Personally, I would have said leave Camilla at home for this trip. She looked so uncomfortable, whether physically or emotionally, almost the entire time. In this instance, she was surprised by this ceremonial cloak that was pinned on her. She could not even muster up the energy to look enthusiastic as her hosts were having her dance with them afterwards. Again, I don't think this is, as some people are ascribing it to, an issue with racism. I think it's just a Camilla thing. I don't think ever wanted this job. I don't think she ever wanted to be queen consort or an ambassador for the UK. I think she just wanted to be Charles' mistress and maybe his wife. Maybe princess consort was a plan that she came up with so that she didn't have to do all this work. Because she's just not a natural in the same way other women in the royal family are at these tours. And I'm talking about Queen Elizabeth, Kate in some circumstances, and of course, Meghan Markle. And obviously her predecessor, Princess Diana. All four of them have this ability to just make it seem effortless and connect with people at the same time. Camilla, it feels forced. She brought a wardrobe with her designed by one of her personal designers, Anna Valentine, I think is her name. Where other royal women, Kate and Meghan, may have been highlighting local designers. Things like that just feel like a missed opportunity once again. There was a moment at the end of the tour when Charles and Camilla rode in a tuk-tuk. I think that's how you pronounce it. And even in those instances where they are kind of honoring local customs, you're just left with this feeling of, what are we doing? Who is this for?
Well, the statement by him fell short of an actual apology, saying it was regrettable and there was no excuse for it. He did not apologize. There was no talk of reparations, and there was no talk of ensuring that there is some sort of repatriation of some of the, for example, artifacts that were taken to the UK, revelations of where some of the bodies of the heroes of the struggle against Kenyan colonialism, where their bodies are laid to rest within the country. So many feel that it was not enough, that it did not go far enough. Yet others are saying that the atrocities have not been addressed. So it is not satisfactory to Kenyans, many of them still complaining that they were not allowed to demonstrate against colonialism, and also against some of the things that the British Army who are present in Kenya are accused of doing. So the reception has been cold even among the political elite. There are some who've written articles in the paper saying how that particular statement did not go far enough, did not reach into the British pockets to pay back reparations, even though the king is not the head of government. But that is the feeling that Kenyans have.
Now, this week I saw an article that was giving you a breakdown of the readership for some of the top tabloid newspapers in the UK. And what it specifically shows you is the changes on a month-by-month basis and a year-to-year basis. And for the media sources or tabloid sources such as the Metro, the Daily Mail, Mail on Sunday, it has shown a steady decline. Now, I'm talking double digits. For the Daily Mail, I believe it was like 17%. The Daily Mirror was like 19%. Was it Daily Express was 20%? Now, I don't know about you guys, but for me personally, I cannot wait for the day when the tabloid trash of the UK no longer has the chokehold that it does on the masses. And the downward trend of readership from a year-to-year basis is giving me a little bit of hope.
Ugh, if this is enjoyment, I mean, I hate to see what she looked like when she's just utterly bored and don't want to be bothered.
Picture of Prince Charles. The only King Charles I recognize is Spaniel. Proves not only that the British royal family's PR playbook is wildly out of date with the current culture, they're truly incompetent and insulated when it comes to knowing how they are perceived by the general population. This isn't giving what you think it gives, Charlie. Look at these people I stole from. Everybody say colonizer. Perhaps. Man of the people? Nah, bro. Nah. Please hang up and try again, friend. Or actually don't. I don't care about you.
I will start with the tricks. And maybe these aren't exactly tricks, but they certainly aren't treats. Charles and Camilla's Kenya visit went exactly as expected. Much of the discussion leading up to the visit was around whether or not Charles would apologize for the violence and atrocities that Kenyans experienced under British colonial rule. For many Kenyans, these are not distant memories. It was only in the 1950s when the Mau Mau uprising against the British government occurred. And it's estimated that at least 10,000 people were killed and many more were tortured as the British tried to suppress them. In 2013, the UK government did pay £20 million to 5,000 claimants who said that their families had been among those killed or injured, but some feel that that is not enough. In this article from the BBC, historian Caroline Elkins says that the atrocities committed during the state of emergency, which was declared by the British colonial government in October of 1952 in response to the Mau Mau revolt, were done in the monarch's name. Queen Elizabeth was on the throne. She had taken the throne just 8 months earlier while on a visit to Kenya, and the rebellion had already been brewing at that time. She goes on to say that it was Her Majesty the Queen whose picture hung in the detention camps, and as they were being tortured and forced to labor, they also had to sing God Save the Queen. It wasn't until 2003 that the Mau Mau fighters were recognized as freedom fighters who were fighting to be free of the colonial rule. But due to the British influence on all aspects of Kenyan life since then, including education, many of the younger generations and the descendants of the Mau Mau fighters do not know the details of their fight for independence. In Charles's speech at the State House in Nairobi, he stopped short of apologizing. He said, "We must acknowledge the most painful times of our long and complex relationship. The wrongdoings of the past are a cause of the greatest sorrow and the deepest regret.
There were abhorrent and unjustifiable acts of violence committed against Kenyans as they waged, as you said at the United Nations, a painful struggle for independence and sovereignty, and for that, there can be no excuse. This speech was carefully crafted so that the UK would take no ownership. Look at the word choice. Charles says we must acknowledge the painful times. Kenyans have long acknowledged this. The only group that needs to acknowledge this is the British. But using we gives the audience the impression that they are a team and that this was not an atrocity committed by one group against the other. He also says that the wrongdoings are a cause of sorrow and regret. Whose wrongdoings? Saying the wrongdoings still keeps the responsibility completely off of Britain. He is acknowledging wrongdoings occurred, but not who committed them. And who feels sorrow and regret? Britain? Because that's not what he said. He specifically avoided saying that. And who committed the abhorrent, unjustifiable acts against Kenyans? He says they occurred, but again, not by who. This speech, which was more than likely written for him, goes to great lengths to point out that the Kenyans were treated unimaginably, but also completely avoids placing any responsibility on Britain. Of course he wasn't going to apologize. The royal family and the British government cannot even admit their historical part in any of this. Disappointing, but not surprising. Also disappointing, but not surprising, were many of the photos coming out of the visit. The photo of Charles and Camilla walking on the red carpet is particularly tone deaf and also shows that their colonial mindset is not as far in the past as they would like us to believe. And yet, many articles coming out of the tabloids described the trip as a success, with one article specifically saying that Camilla was dripping with sophistication. And if anyone needs more proof of how in bed with the media Charles and Camilla are, they only have to read that description and look at this photo. Dripping with sophistication. At least Charles finally got a wife who won't overshadow him. Another unsurprising royal-related moment of the week was the news that another police officer from the UK was sending racist and misogynistic messages about Meghan. A West Yorkshire officer's ex-wife said that she turned in the messages over a year ago. She described them as racist and vile and said they were mainly about Meghan and even the Queen. The messaging sounds very similar to the story we heard from July of 2022, when 2 UK officers were fired for sending racist messages about Meghan, as well as the story from September of 2022, when 5 officers pled guilty to doing the same. And those 5 officers had all worked for Special Operations at some point in their career, a group that is frequently tasked with protecting the royal family. And now seems like a good time to point out that the members of RAVEC, the council who decided to pull and also not reinstate Prince Harry and his family's security, includes the Deputy Assistant Commissioner of Special Operations for the Met Police. Also, it includes the chairman of the National Police Chiefs Council for Counterterrorism, and Clive Alderton, who is Charles's personal secretary, the one who Byline told us personally told Harry to take Christian Jones's name out of the letter, and a senior aide to Prince William. It is almost impossible to believe that this group of people does not have ill intent when deciding to pull the Sussex's security. And maybe I was wrong. Perhaps tricks was an appropriate description for that part of the video. But let's move on to the treats. In a post on X, the nonprofit Culturingua thanked the Archwell Foundation for partnering with them to support the Afghan Cooking Social for Women. This program provides Afghan women in San Antonio the opportunity to build community through cooking traditional meals. And Harry and Meghan have been supportive of Afghan refugees for multiple years. In November of 2021, they visited Joint Base McGuire-Dixon in New Jersey. At the time, it was home to more than 10,000 Afghan refugees. There, they met with young children who were learning conversational English. Their 2021 public disclosure statement, which is available on the Archwell website, also shows that in that same year, they gave $450,000 in support of organizations helping Afghan refugees. And in 2022, the Human First Coalition awarded the Archwell Foundation the Partner Organization Award for their advocacy and support. And in news from another organization that they have long supported, Prince Harry was appointed as a member of the board of directors for African Parks this year. He first partnered with the nonprofit in July of 2016, when he helped launch the 500 Elephants Project in Malawi, which was one of the largest elephant translocations in history. In August of 2017, Harry and Meghan returned to Africa and assisted Elephants Without Borders with an elephant tracking project. In 2021, Harry narrated the African Park's Hope Starts Here video for Earth Day. And in August of 2022, he co-hosted U.S. officials, conservationists, and philanthropists on a tour of protected wildlife and nature preserves in Zambia, Mozambique, and Rwanda. And I know this is petty, but when I first read about Harry's promotion, all I could think about was this.
One small problem, Willie. Africa was his thing, he said. And he had the right to say this, or felt he did because he was the heir. It was ever in his power to veto my thing. And he had every intention of exercising, even flexing, that veto power. We'd had some real rows about it, I told Teach and Mike. One day, we almost came to blows in front of our childhood mates, the sons of Emily and Hugh. One of the sons asked, "Why can't you both work on Africa?" Willie had a fit, flew at this son for daring to make such a suggestion. Because rhinos, elephants, that's mine.
Another treat from the week is this widely circulated clip from Jeopardy! In which Prince Archie was the answer. And this clip was also a great reminder to royalists and tabloid writers that most people in the US do not pay any attention to that family. Also, I have to wonder, since Harry and Meghan have told us that they are frequent Jeopardy! Watchers, if they happen to see this episode. And finally, my favorite royal-related moment of the week is the photo of Harry, Meghan, Archie, and Lily trick-or-treating Halloween night. And I thought this drawing of the moment was a happy medium between sharing the photo and not sharing the photo, because even though we've all seen it, I felt torn about it. This photo also feels like the perfect representation of both the freedom and family that they both wanted. And not only do they have that family and freedom now, but they've built a life that allows them to do simple things like take their children trick-or-treating or go to a 4th of July parade, a life they could not have had in the UK. And they might have lost some things when they left there, but what they got in return seems to be much greater.
Remember this video that I posted on Monday? What I didn't tell you is that I heard from a former Royal Rota reporter that night. Well, which Royal reporter was in my comment section? Emily Andrews, formerly of the Daily Mail and most recently The Sun, where she was their Royal Rota representative. This is from my Twitter. I posted the videos and then she commented publicly. I did try to reach out to her privately, but have not heard back. Emily was at The Sun during the period where the rural rival story broke from Dan Wooten in The Sun. And I want to look at some of her replies and talk about what I find interesting. First off is this idea that Jason knew that the letter from Meghan to her father had been written with an eye to it being made public. But then there was a strong suggestion, even at that point, she wanted it out there. To be clear, because this comes up later, there's no proof. A suggestion is not proof. I also think it would have been incredibly reckless to not write this article and consider, how would I feel if it was made public? This kind of risk assessment and forward thinking is the kind of thing that men get praised for in the business world and women get called conniving and calculating. Here's what I didn't know. The MOS, Mail on Sunday, had sat on the letter for 6 months. It was the People article that triggered it. I checked around and I haven't found anywhere else or anyone else that knew that the Mail on Sunday potentially sat on this letter for 6 entire months, which means Thomas Markle gave it to Caroline Graham very soon after he received it. And I'm just spitballing here. This is not proven true, but I wonder if they'd been sitting on it trying to continue to milk more information about Thomas Markle, and then the People article was the perfect opportunity for them to turn to Thomas and say, are you going to let that be out there? Are you going to let her win? We need to tell your side of the story and publish this letter. I do not think Thomas Markle is a well man, and that is no excuse for how he has treated and sold out his daughter. But I also find it extremely uncomfortable how the media has preyed on him. The next tweet. The Cambridges/Rose thing was different in that there was no proof. And I can't help feeling like the no proof is a little hypocritical, because just in the tweet above it, we have an example of when certain words are used to suggest something where there's no proof. That brings me back to why I am so interested in this situation to begin with. It's not if an affair happened or not. I don't care about that. It's how the media acted. What we do actually have proof of is some in the British media, specifically the tabloids, not letting a little thing like lack of facts get in the way of a potentially juicy scoop. Even serious media outlets have run stories with little to no proof. Stories that are dangerous to marginalized communities, such as this one that continues to irritate me. with an intentionally worded title. Meghan Cookbook Mosque linked to 19 terror suspects, including Jihadi John, in group's investigation. The only proof in this article is an investigation led by the HJS, which is a right-wing conservative think tank, which is very anti-Muslim. The article provides no quotes from this research, no link to the paper so that you can read it yourself. And trust me, I have tried to find it. I have scoured HJS's website. I have emailed them. I have tried to contact them so I can just see the investigation for myself. It's not proof. It's intellectually dishonest. I'm also not quite sure what no proof has to do with it. Yes, there was an actual letter that Meghan sent to Thomas Markle that was published, but that is clearly illegal and an invasion of privacy and copyright, which was a part of the judge's ruling about why there was no need for this to go to a trial because it was so obviously illegal. I will get into the second big revelation here, but I want to wrap up the topic of proof with some of Emily Andrews' articles, specifically two that she has spoken out about. The first one is the Meghan Markle baby shower, which talks about Meghan heading out to the party, leaving a posh hotel, flowers and present deliveries, etc. There was a slight problem. February 19th, 2019 was a Tuesday. Meghan Markle's baby shower wasn't until Wednesday. These were details of an event that hadn't happened. Quite possibly just guessed at the reason why Meghan Markle was seen leaving her hotel. Andrews tweeted that a KP man told her that M's baby shower was Tuesday. This is partially a structural issue with media, with having to turn out so many articles, because it seems like a pretty bad idea to not wait for the event to happen to make sure it actually happens on the right day. And then there was this May 2019 article about Priyanka Chopra visiting baby Archie and gifting him Tiffany jewels, which Priyanka herself responded to on Twitter saying, "While these are great ideas, the story is untrue, and I was actually in town for work. I hope whoever this source is starts checking their facts more often." To which Emily replied that she would not publish something without having it confirmed and had 3 separate sources for the story. Perhaps proof means different things to different people. Again, it's interesting that despite a lack of proof on the Cambridge's Rose thing, we've seen plenty of articles published where proof is a loosely held term. Whether it's research you never get to see, or words like supposedly, suggested, to cover bases for potential legal disputes. The second thing revealed is that, this is a quote from Emily, "To my recollection, again, we were all warned off by Harbottle, but verbally, not necessarily in writing." From my research, I haven't found anyone who has corroborated Tom Sykes' Daily Beast story about Harbottle and Lewis sending legal warnings to papers until now. It seems like the fact that it happened, no matter the medium it was delivered, is more important. Also, note the word "not necessarily in writing." Was it in writing or not? This seems like a really simple yes or no question, or if you don't know for sure, why include it? I replied with my own comments, and she did reply the next day. She reiterates that journalistically the 2 stories are different. Yes, one is clearly illegal, and that printing a story like that about Prince William and an alleged affair is libel. I don't completely disagree if there is no proof. But I do find it interesting that William's invasion of privacy was used as the reason for these stories to stop and not libel. And then I was hoping that there would be a follow-up to this because I wasn't clear what the Mail on Sunday had published the letter, so it was deemed legally okay to follow it up. That was our conversation. And again, the 2 big takeaways that I found surprising was the fact that the Mail on Sunday sat on that letter for 6 months. I don't believe we had that time frame before, at least by Emily's recollection. And with the Harbottle Lewis case, she confirms that they were warned, whether it was written or verbal. Emily says to her recollection it was a verbal warning. Tom Sykes for the Daily Beast claims to have reproduced some of the actual letter from Harbottle and Lewis in their article. Not gonna lie, it was a strange start to this week.
Meghan and Harry took their children out for trick-or-treating yesterday. How dare they? How dare they go out for trick-or-treating with their children who are clearly real, and they go on these trips with their children up the street to go to different people's houses, asking for candy for their children when they are multi-millionaires living in a $14 million home in Montecito, Santa Barbara. How dare they get upset for me complaining when I'm not paying them, it's not through taxpayer money. How dare they? How dare they live this life without my tax-paying money? And how dare they go live this happy life when I complained since 2016 and it's about to go in 2024 about them using our taxpayer money to pay for their renovation when all the other royal family members do the exact same thing. But how dare they go live this life, this happy life with their real children? How dare they? How could they do this to us? They are such narcissists. And look at Meghan with her white bag. She's such a narcissist. Just look at the white bag. She just wants all the attention. Harry and Archie has orange pumpkin baskets and she chose a white bag. Like, can she give the spotlight to anyone else? Like, they aren't real royals. You want to know what real royals are? Look at this. Ooh, excuse me. This is real royalty right here. The Queen Camilla. Look at her sitting in a car while King Charles go do his king duties. See, this is what you're supposed to do. This is what a wife's supposed to do. She's supposed to let her husband have all of the attention. She sits in the car and wait for him while he does his work. She sits in the car in Kenya. Yes. And you want to talk about racism? The royal family isn't racist. Just look at how excited the queen was when she was dancing in Kenya with the Africans, the blacks. Just look at our Queen Camilla. Look at her go. Look at her. She's not looking at the camera to look like I'm not racist.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, hit that notification bell.